Yes, indeed. Happy Friday. Sarah, Ronnie, welcome in. How are we doing tonight? Hope everybody had a nice, calm, uneventful week. Whoa, what the hell is that all about? Oh. Because I'm dumb. There we go. Went and got my visuals all screwed up. Sarah, thank you. Well, I hope you were safe in rushing home. I appreciate that. No speeding. Okay, that's good. I wouldn't want you to get a ticket on my account. I'll give it a couple minutes for people to start filtering in here. TikTok didn't bury my promo video today, or I posted it last night, so hopefully more people saw it. See, I'm glad. See, that's cool. I'm glad you saw it. That means they're either not burying my posts anymore, or they are. It's posting it the night before was a better idea. Oh, you have a new kitten? Oh. Kittens are so adorable. The last cat that I had, before the one I currently have, was a kitten when we got it. Yes, you did, Kaylee. I got him as a kitten, and when he, yes, Blessed Beltane. Oh, what are we reading? Well, I have 3 stories from 3 titans of science fiction tonight. All a little bizarre. Hi, Savannah. Welcome in. Crazy Mama. I was wondering when I was going to see you. Aw. We'll give her pets. Give Raven pets for me. My current cat is named Mia. She is. We got her when she was just under 2 years old. She was a rescue, and she's a loaf. She's one of those cats, when she lays down, she just kind of spreads out like a big gray striped pancake. Love her to death. Hey, Lynn, how are you? I see you, Katie. Can't sneak in here without me seeing you. So my lives are Wednesday night and Friday night and Sunday night. All 3 start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and go for about 2 hours. Wednesdays and Fridays are for reserved for science fiction, thriller, horror, mystery, short stories usually. And Sunday nights are Sunday night bedtime stories, where we read more family-friendly chapter books. We recently did Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. We've done A Wrinkle in Time, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So books like that. And some of you who have... Well, welcome in, Tony. Or Tanya. Is it Tanya? It's Tanya. Tanya Nash. Gotcha. My bad. So, those of you that have been here before, some of my regulars know that we have a special event coming up this Sunday that's starting on Sunday and going through Wednesday and Friday. We're going to be doing 3 nights. We're going to be reading The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So that should be exciting. 2 a.m. where you are. So you're in Europe somewhere. Quackabag, where are you? In the UK. Katie's in the UK. My daughter lives in Liverpool. Where are you guys from? Hey, the Witch's Pit. How you doing, Bree? UK. Awesome. I love that I have international viewers. Yes, you did. I'm so glad. That makes me so happy. Norway, Florida, I love it. I freaking love it. Wisconsin, love it. Life be lifin'. You ain't kidding. You ain't kidding. You and I need to connect and catch up. Missouri. I know I've got some of my yeah, that's what I thought. I know I had some of my Pacific Northwest peoples in here. Ohio, England. Oh, I love it. That's so cool. That's so cool. So reading the full book in one live? No. Usually with Wednesday nights and Friday nights, because they're short stories, I generally read the whole thing. I will occasionally split them up if they're longer, and it's one that we really want to do. I did that with Algernon Blackwood's The Wendigo. That was a 2-night thing. The Sunday nights are rarely done in one night. I think we did the one that we did in one night was Mouse and the Motorcycle. Most of them will be over the course of 3 to 4 nights. Like the Wizard of Oz, we're going to be doing that as a week-long event, so it's going to go Sunday, Wednesday, and then Friday. And then we'll be starting a new book the following Sunday, which I have picked out, and you all are going to enjoy because it's a classic. And you're all going to enjoy because at the end, I cry. Without fail. Without fail. And some of you who have been here before already know. So, boy, it's time for me to shut my trap and start reading here. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with UndeadPapa. If you're just arriving, well, you're right on time. I will put Inkheart on my list. I gotta look it up, but I will definitely put it on my list. I know it's been requested a couple times. So tonight, we begin with a story from Isaac Asimov, a glimpse into a world where everything is connected, everything is controlled, and nothing ever has to be touched. A world where stepping outside is almost unthinkable, and a simple malfunction can change everything. So wherever you're listening from, dim the lights, sit back and relax, because Storytime is about to begin. It's such a beautiful day. On April 12th, 2117, the field modulator brake valve in the door belonging to Mrs. Richard Henshaw depolarized for reasons unknown. As a result, Mrs. Henshaw's day was completely upset, and her son, Richard Jr., first developed his strange neurosis. It was not the type of thing you would find listed as a neurosis in the usual textbooks, and certainly young Richard behaved in most respects just as a well-brought-up 12-year-old in prosperous circumstances ought to behave. And yet from April 12th on, Richard Henshaw Jr. could only, with regret, ever persuade himself to go through a door. If of all of this, on April 12th, Mrs. Henshaw had no premonition. She woke in the morning, an ordinary morning, as her Meccano slithered gently into her room with a cup of coffee on a small tray. Mrs. Henshaw was planning a visit to New York in the afternoon, and she had several things to do first that could not quite be trusted to a Meccano. So after 1 or 2 sips, she stepped out of bed. The Meccano backed away, moving silently along the diamagnetic field that kept its oblong body half an inch above the floor, and moved back to the kitchen, where its simple computer was quite adequate to set the proper controls on the various kitchen appliances in order that an appropriate breakfast might be prepared. Thank you for the reminder. Hey, Wings. Hey, clickety-clicked. Mrs. Henshaw, having bestowed the usual sentimental glance upon the cubograph of her dead husband, passed through the stages of her morning ritual with a certain contentment. She could hear her son across the hall clattering through his, but she knew she need not interfere with him. The Meccano was well adjusted to see to it, as a matter of course, that he was showered, that he had on a change of clothing, and that he would eat a nourishing breakfast. The Turgo shower she had installed the year before made the morning wash and dry so quick and pleasant that really she felt certain Dickie would wash even without supervision. On a morning like this, when she was busy, it would certainly not be necessary for her to do more than deposit a casual peck on the boy's cheek before he left. She heard the soft chime the Meccano sounded to indicate approaching school time, and she floated down the force lift to the lower floor, her hairstyle for the day only sketchily designed as yet, in order to perform that motherly duty. She found Richard standing at the door, with his text reels and pocket protector dangling by their strap and a frown on his face. "Say, Mom," he said, looking up, "I dialed the school's coords, but nothing happens." She said almost automatically, "Nonsense, Dickie, I never heard of such a thing." "Well, you try." Mrs. Henshaw tried a number of times. Strange, the school door was always set for general reception. She tried other coordinates. Her friends' doors might not be set for reception, but there would be a signal at least, and then she could explain. But nothing happened at all. The door remained an inactive gray barrier despite all her manipulations. It was obvious that the door was out of order, and only 5 months after its annual fall inspection by the company. She was quite angry about it. It would happen on a day when she had so much planned. She thought petulantly of the fact that a month earlier she had decided against installing a subsidiary door on the ground, that it was an unnecessary expense. How was she to know that doors were getting to be so shoddy? She stepped to the visiphone while the anger still burned in her, and said to Richard, You just go down the road, Dickie, and use the Williamsons' door." Ironically, in view of later developments, Richard balked. "Aw, gee, Mom, I'll get dirty. Can't I stay home till the door is fixed?" And as ironically, Mrs. Henshaw insisted. With her finger on the combination board of the phone, she said, "You won't get dirty if you put flexies on your shoes, and don't forget to brush yourself well before you go into their house." "But golly!" "No, back talk, Dickie. You've got to be in school. Just let me see you walk out of here, and quickly, or you'll be late." The Meccano, an advanced model and very responsive, was already standing before Richard with flexies on one appendage. Richard pulled the transparent plastic shields over his shoes and moved down the hall with visible reluctance. "I don't even know how to work this thing, Mom." "You just push that button," Mrs. Henshaw called. "The red button where it says for emergency use, and don't dawdle. Do you want the Meccano to go along with you?" "Gosh, no," he called back morosely. "What do you think I am, a baby? Gosh!" His muttering was cut off by a slam. With flying fingers, Mrs. Henshaw punched the appropriate combination on the phone board and thought of the things she intended saying to the company about this. Joe Bloom, a reasonable young man who had gone through technology school with added training in force field mechanics, was at the Henshaw residence in less than half an hour. He was really quite competent, though Mrs. Henshaw regarded his youth with deep suspicion. She opened the movable house panel when he first signaled, and her sight of him was as he stood there, brushing himself vigorously to remove the dust of the open air. He took off his flexies and dropped them where he stood. Mrs. Henshaw closed the house panel against the flash of raw sunlight that had entered. She found herself irrationally hoping that the step-by-step trip from the public door had been an unpleasant one, or perhaps that the public door itself had been out of order and the youth had had to lug his tools even farther than necessary 200 yards. She wanted the company, or its representative at least, to suffer a bit. It would teach them what broken doors meant. But he seemed cheerful and unperturbed as he said, "Good morning, ma'am. I came to see about your door." "I'm glad someone did," said Mrs. Henshaw ungraciously. "My day is quite ruined." "Sorry, ma'am. What seems to be the trouble?" "It just won't work. Nothing at all happens when you adjust the cords," said Mrs. Henshaw. "There was no warning at all. I had to send my son out to the neighbors through that thing." She pointed to the entrance through which the repairman had come. He smiled and spoke out of the conscious wisdom of his own specialized training in doors. "That's a door, ma'am. You don't give that kind of capital letter when you write it. It's a hand door, sort of. It used to be the only kind once." "Well, at least it works. My boys had to go out in the dirt and germs." "It's not bad outside today, ma'am," he said, with the connoisseur-like air of one whose profession forced him into the open nearly every day. "Sometimes it is real pleasant. But I guess you want I should fix this door here, ma'am, so I'll get on with it." He sat down on the floor, opened the large tool case he had brought with him, and in half a minute, by use of a point demagnetizer, he had the control panel removed and a set of intricate vitals exposed. He whistled to himself as he placed the fine electrodes of the field analyzer on numerous points, studying the shifting needles on the dials. Mrs. Hanshaw watched him, arms folded. Finally, he said, "Well, here's something." And with a deft twist, he disengaged the brake valve. He tapped it with a fingernail and said, "This here brake valve is depolarized, ma'am. There's your whole trouble." He ran his finger along the little pigeonholes in his tool case and lifted out a duplicate of the object he had taken from the door mechanism. "These things just go out all of a sudden. Can't predict it." He put the control panel back and stood up. "It'll work now, ma'am." He punched a reference combination, blanked it, then punched another. Each time the dull gray of the door gave way to a deep, velvety blackness. He said, "Will you sign here, ma'am? And put down your charge number, too, please." "Thank you, ma'am." He punched a new combination, that of his home factory, with a polite touch of finger to forehead, he stepped through the door. As his body entered the blackness, it cut off sharply. Less and less of him was visible, and the tip of his tool case was the last thing that showed. A second after he had passed through completely, the door turned back to dull gray. Half an hour later, when Mrs. Hanshaw finally completed her interrupted preparations and was fuming over the misfortune of the morning, the phone buzzed annoyingly, and her real troubles began. Miss Elizabeth Robbins was distressed. Little Dick Hanshaw had always been a good pupil. She hated to report him like this, and yet she told herself his actions were certainly queer, and she would talk to his mother, not to the principal. She slipped out to the phone during the morning study period, leaving a student in charge. She made her connection and found herself staring at Mrs. Hanshaw's handsome and somewhat formidable head. Miss Robbins quailed, but it was too late to turn back. She said diffidently, "Mrs. Hanshaw, I'm Miss Robbins," she ended on a rising note. Mrs. Hanshaw looked blank and then said, "Richard's teacher." That, too, ended on a rising note. "That's right. I called you, Mrs. Hanshaw," Miss Robbins plunged right into it, "to tell you that Dick was quite late to school this morning." "He was? But that couldn't be. I saw him leave." Miss Robbins looked astonished. She said, "You mean you saw him use the door?" Mrs. Hanshaw said quietly, "Well, no. Our door was temporarily out of order. I sent him to a neighbor, and he used that door." "Are you sure?" "Of course I am sure. I wouldn't lie to you." No, Mrs. Hanshaw, I wasn't implying that at all. I meant you are sure he found the way to the neighbor. He might have got lost." "Ridiculous. We have the proper maps, and I'm sure Richard knows the location of every house in District A3. Then, with the quiet pride of one who knows what is her due, she added, "Not that he ever needs to know, of course. The cords are all that are necessary at any time." Miss Robbins, who came from a family that had always had to economize rigidly on the use of its doors, the price of power being what it was, and who had therefore run errands on foot until quite an advanced age, resented the pride. She said quite clearly, "Well, I'm afraid, Mrs. Hanshaw, that Dick did not use the neighbor's door. He was over an hour late to school, and the condition of his flexies made it quite obvious that he tramped across country. They were muddy." "Muddy?" Mrs. Hanshaw repeated the emphasis on the word. "What did he say? What was his excuse?" Miss Robbins couldn't help but feel a little glad at the discomfiture of the other woman. She said, "He wouldn't talk about it. Frankly, Mrs. Hanshaw, he seems ill. That's why I called you. Perhaps you might want to have a doctor look at him." "Is he running a temperature?" The mother's voice went shrill. "Oh, no, I don't mean physically ill. It's just his attitude and the look in his eyes." She hesitated, then said with every attempt at delicacy, "I thought perhaps a routine checkup with a psychic probe." She didn't finish. Mrs. Hanshaw, in a chilled voice and with what was as close to a snort as her breeding would permit, said, "Are you implying that Richard is neurotic?" "Oh, no, Mrs. Hanshaw, but it certainly sounded so. The idea! He has always been perfectly healthy. I'll take this up with him when he gets home. I'm sure there's a perfectly normal explanation which he'll give to me." The connection broke abruptly, and Miss Robbins felt hurt and uncommonly foolish. After all, she had only tried to help, to fulfill what she considered an obligation to her students. She hurried back to the classroom with a glance at the metal face of the wall clock. The study period was drawing to an end. English composition was next. But her mind wasn't completely on English composition. Automatically, she called the students to have them read selections from their literary creations. And occasionally she punched one of those selections on tape and ran it through the small vocalizer to show the students how English should be read. The vocalizer's mechanical voice, as always, dripped perfection, but again, as always, lacked character. Sometimes she wondered if it was wise to try to train the students into a speech that was divorced from individuality and geared only to a mass average accent and intonation. Today, however, she had no thought for that. It was Richard Hanshaw she watched. He sat quietly in his seat, quite obviously indifferent to his surroundings. He was lost deep in himself, and just not the same boy he had been. It was obvious to her that he had had some unusual experience that morning, and really she was right to call his mother, although perhaps she ought not to have made the remark about the probe. Still, it was quite the thing these days. All sorts of people get probed. There wasn't any disgrace attached to it, or there shouldn't be anyway. She called on Richard finally. She had to call twice before he responded and rose to his feet. The general subject assigned had been, if you had your choice of traveling on some ancient vehicle, which would you choose and why? Miss Robbins tried to use the topic every semester. It was a good one because it carried a sense of history with it. It forced the youngster to think about the manner of living of people in past ages. She listened while Richard Hanshaw read in a low voice. "If I had my chance of ancient vehicles," he said, pronouncing the H in vehicles, "I would choose the Stratoliner. It travels slow like all vehicles, but it is clean. Because it travels in the stratosphere, it must be all enclosed so that you are not likely to catch disease. You can see the stars if it's nighttime, almost as good as in a planetarium. If you look down, you can see the earth like a map, or maybe see clouds." He went on for several hundred more words. She said brightly when he had finished reading, "It's pronounced vehicles, Richard. No H. Accent on the first syllable. And you don't say travel slow or see good. What do you say, class?" There was a small chorus of responses, and she went on. "That's right. Now what is the difference between an adjective and an adverb? Who can tell me?" And so it went. Lunch passed. Some pupils stayed to eat, some went home. Richard stayed. Miss Robbins noted that, as usually, he didn't. The afternoon passed too, and then there was the final bell, and the usual upsurging hum as 25 boys and girls rattled their belongings together and took their leisurely place in line. Miss Robbins clapped her hands together. "Quickly, children. Come, Zelda, take your place." "I dropped my tape punch, Miss Robbins," shrilled the girl defensively. "Well, pick it up, pick it up. Now, children, be brisk, be brisk." She pushed the button that slid a section of the wall into a recess and revealed the gray blankness of a large door. It was not the usual door that the occasional student used in going home for lunch, but an advanced model that was one of the prides of this well-to-do private school. In addition to its double width, it possessed a large, impressively gear-filled automatic serial finder, which was capable of adjusting the door for a number of different coordinates at automatic intervals. At the beginning of the semester, Miss Robbins always had to spend an afternoon with the mechanic adjusting the device for the coordinates of the homes of the new class. But then, thank goodness, it rarely needed attention for the remainder of the term. The class lined up alphabetically. First girls, then boys. The door went velvety black, and Hester Adams waved her hand and stepped through. "Bye." The bye was cut off in the middle, as it almost always was. The door went gray, then black again, and Teresa Cantarocci went through. Gray, black. Zelda Karlowitz, gray, black. Patricia Coombs, gray, black. Sarah May Evans. The line grew smaller as the door swallowed them one by one, depositing each in her home. Of course, an occasional mother forgot to leave the house door on special reception at the appropriate time, and then the school door remained gray. Automatically, after a minute-long wait, the door went on to the next combination in line, and the pupil in question had to wait till it was all over, after which a phone call to the forgetful parent would set things right. This was always bad for the pupils involved, especially the sensitive ones who took seriously the implication that they were little thought of at home. Miss Robbins always tried to impress this on visiting parents, but it happened at least once every semester just the same. The girls were all through now. John Abramowitz stepped through, then Edwin Byrne. Of course, another trouble, and more frequent, was the boy or girl who got into line out of place. They would do it despite the teacher's sharpest watch, particularly at the beginning of the term when the proper order was less familiar to them. When that happened, children would be popping into the wrong houses by the half-dozen and would have to be sent back. It always meant a mix-up that took minutes to straighten out, and parents were invariably irate. Miss Robbins was suddenly aware that the line had stopped. She spoke sharply to the boy at the head of the line. "Step through, Samuel. What are you waiting for?" Samuel Jones raised a complacent countenance and said, "It's not my combination, Miss Robbins." "Well, whose is it?" She looked impatiently down the line of 5 remaining boys. Who was out of place? "It's Dick Hanshaw's, Miss Robbins." "Where is he?" Another boy answered with the rather repulsive tone of self-righteousness all children automatically assume in reporting the deviations of their friends to elders in authority. "He went through the fire door, Miss Robbins." "What?" The schoolroom door had passed on another combination, and Samuel Jones passed through. One by one, the rest followed. Miss Robbins was alone in the classroom. She stepped to the fire door. It was a small affair, manually operated and hidden behind a bend in the wall so that it would not break up the uniform structure of the room. She opened it a crack. It was there as a means of escape from the building in case of fire. a device which was enforced by an anachronistic law that did not take into account the modern methods of automatic firefighting that all public buildings used. There was nothing outside but the outside. The sunlight was harsh, and dusty wind was blowing. Miss Robbins closed the door. She was glad she had called Mrs. Hanshaw. She had done her duty. More than ever, it was obvious that something was wrong with Richard. She suppressed the impulse to phone again. Mrs. Hanshaw did not go to New York that day. She remained home in a mixture of anxiety and an irrational anger, the latter directed against the impudent Miss Robbins. Some 15 minutes before school's end, her anxiety drove her to the door. Last year she had had it equipped with an automatic device which activated to the school's coordinates at 5 of 3, and kept it so, barring manual adjustment until Richard arrived. Her eyes were fixed on the door's dismissal gray. Why couldn't an inactive force field be any other color, something more lively and cheerful? And waited. Her hands felt cold as she squeezed them together. The door turned black at the precise second, but nothing happened. The minutes passed, and Richard was late. Then quite late. Then very late. It was 4:15 when she was distracted. Normally she would have phoned the school, but she couldn't. She couldn't. Not after that teacher had deliberately cast doubts on Richard's mental well-being. How could she? Mrs. Hanshaw moved about restlessly, lighting a cigarette with fumbling fingers, then smudging it out. Could it be something quite normal? Could Richard be staying after school for some reason? Surely he would have told her in advance. A gleam of light struck her. He knew she was planning to go to New York and might not be back till late in the evening. No, he would surely have told her. Why fool herself? Her pride was breaking. She would have to call the school, or even, she closed her eyes and teardrops squeezed through between the lashes, the police. And when she opened her eyes, Richard stood before her, eyes on the ground and his whole bearing that of someone waiting for a blow to fall. "Hello, Mom." Mrs. Hanshaw's anxiety transmuted itself instantly, in a manner known only to mothers, into anger. "Where have you been, Richard?" And then, before she could go further into the refrain concerning careless, unthinking sons and broken-hearted mothers, she took note of his appearance in greater detail and gasped in utter horror. She said, "You've been in the open." Her son looked down at his dusty shoes minus flexies, at the dirt marks that streaked his lower arms, at the small but definite tear in his shirt. He said, "Gosh, Mom, I just thought I'd—" and he faded out. She said, "Was there anything wrong with the school door?" "No, Mom." "Do you realize I've been worried sick about you?" She waited vainly for an answer. "Well, I'll talk to you afterward, young man. First, you're taking a bath and every stitch of your clothing is being thrown out. Meccano!" But the Meccano had already reacted properly to the phrase "taking a bath," and was off to the bathroom in its silent glide. "Take your shoes off right here," said Mrs. Henshaw. "Then march after Meccano." Richard did as he was told with a resignation that placed him beyond futile protest. Mrs. Hanshaw picked up the soiled shoes between thumb and forefinger and dropped them down the disposal chute, which hummed in faint dismay at the unexpected load. She dusted her hands carefully on a tissue which she allowed to float down the chute after the shoes. She did not join Richard at dinner, but let him eat in the worse-than-lack of company of the Meccano. This, she thought, would be an active sign of her displeasure, and would do more than any amount of scolding or punishment to make him realize that he had done wrong. Richard, she frequently told herself, was a sensitive boy. But she went up to see him at bedtime. She smiled at him and spoke softly. She thought that would be the best way. After all, he had been punished already. She said, "What happened today, Dickie boy?" She had called him that when he was a baby, and just the sound of the name softened her nearly to tears. But he only looked away, and his voice was stubborn and cold. "I just don't like to go through those damn doors, Mom." "But why ever not?" He shuffled his hands over the filmy sheet, fresh, clean, antiseptic, and of course disposable after each use, and said, "I just don't like them." "But then how do you expect to go to school, Dickie?" "I'll get up early," he mumbled. "But there's nothing wrong with doors. Don't like 'em." He never once looked up at her. She said despairingly, "Oh, well, you have a good sleep, and tomorrow morning you'll feel much better." She kissed him and left the room, automatically passing her hand through the photocell beam, and in that manner dimming the room lights. But she had trouble sleeping herself that night. Why should Dickie dislike doors so suddenly? They had never bothered him before. To be sure, the door had broken down in the morning, but that should make him appreciate them all the more. Dickie was behaving so unreasonably. Unreasonably, that remained... Bleh. Boy, got a little tongue-tied there. Unreasonably. That reminded her of Miss Robbins and her diagnosis, and Mrs. Hanshaw's soft jaw set in the darkness and privacy of her bedroom. Nonsense. The boy was upset, and a night's sleep was all the therapy he needed. But the next morning, when she arose, her son was not in the house. The Meccano could not speak, but it could answer questions with gestures of its appendages equivalent to a yes or no, and it did not take Mrs. Hanshaw more than half a minute to ascertain that the boy had arisen 30 minutes earlier than usual, skipped his shower, and darted out of the house, but not by the way of the door. Out the other way, through the door, small d. Mrs. Hanshaw's visiphone signaled genteelly at 3:10 p.m. that day. Mrs. Hanshaw guessed the caller, and having activated the receiver, saw that she had guessed correctly. A quick glance in the mirror to see that she was properly calm after a day of abstracted concern and worry, and then she keyed in her own transmission. "Yes, Miss Robbins?" she said coldly. Richard's teacher was a bit breathless. She said, "Mrs. Hanshaw, Richard has deliberately left through the fire door, although I told him to use the regular door. I do not know where he went." Mrs. Hanshaw said carefully, "He left to come home." Miss Robbins looked dismayed. "Do you approve of this?" Pale-faced, Mrs. Hanshaw set about putting the teacher in her place. "I don't think it is up to you to criticize. If my son does not choose to use the door, it is his affair and mine. I don't think there is any school ruling that would force him to use the door, is there?" Her bearing quite plainly intimated that if there were, she would see to it that it was changed. Miss Robbins flushed and had time for one quick remark before contact was broken. She said, "I'd have him probed. I really would." Mrs. Hanshaw remained standing before the quartzinium plate, staring blindly at its blank face. Her sense of family placed her for a few moments quite firmly on Richard's side. Why did he have to use the door if he chose not to? And then she settled down to wait, and pride battled the gnawing anxiety that something, after all, was wrong with Richard. He came home with a look of defiance on his face, but his mother, with a strenuous effort at self-control, met him as though nothing were out of the ordinary. For weeks she followed that policy. "It's nothing," she told herself. "It's a vagary. He'll grow out of it." It grew into an almost normal state of affairs. Then, too, every once in a while, perhaps 3 days in a row, she would come down to breakfast to find Richard waiting sullenly at the door, and then using it when school time came. She always refrained from commenting on the matter. Always when he did that, and especially when he followed it up by arriving home via the door, her heart grew warm, and she thought, "Well, it's over." But always with the passing of 1 day, 2 or 3, he would return like an addict to his drug and drift silently out by the door, small d, before she woke. And each time she thought despairingly of psychiatrists and probes, and each time the vision of Miss Robbins' low-bred satisfaction at possibly learning of it stopped her, although she was scarcely aware that that was the true motive. Meanwhile, she lived with it, and made the best of it. The Meccano was instructed to wait at the door, small d, with a Turgo kit and a change of clothing. Richard washed and changed without resistance. His underthings, socks, flexies were disposable in any case, and Miss Hanshaw bore uncomplainingly the expense of daily disposal of shirts. Trousers she finally allowed to go a week before disposal on condition of rigorous nightly cleansing. One day she suggested that Richard accompany her on a trip to New York. It was more a vague desire to keep him in sight than part of any purposeful plan. He did not object. He was even happy. He stepped right through the door unconcerned. He didn't hesitate. He even lacked the look of resentment he wore on those mornings he used the door to go to school. Mrs. Hanshaw rejoiced. This could be a way of weaning him back into door usage, and she racked her ingenuity for excuses to make trips with Richard. She even raised her power bill to quite unheard-of heights by suggesting and going through with a trip to Canton for the day in order to witness a Chinese festival. That was on a Sunday, and the next morning Richard marched directly to the hole in the wall he always used. Mrs. Hanshaw, having wakened particularly early, witnessed that, and for once badgered past endurance, she called after him plaintively, "Why not the door, Dickie?" He said briefly, "It's all right for Canton," and stepped out of the house. So that plan ended in failure. And then, one day, Richard came home soaking wet. The Meccano hovered above him uncertainly, and Mrs. Hanshaw, just returned from a 4-hour visit with her sister in Iowa, cried, "Richard Hanshaw!" He said, hangdog fashion, "It started raining. All of a sudden, it started raining." For a moment, the word didn't register with her. Her own school days and her studies of geography were 20 years in the past. And then she remembered and caught the vision of the water pouring recklessly and endlessly down from the sky, a mad cascade of water with no tap to turn off, no button to push, no contact to break. She said, "And you stayed out in it?" He said, "Well, Gee, Mom, I came home as fast as I could. I didn't know it was going to rain. Mrs. Hanshaw had nothing to say. She was appalled, and the sensation filled her to full words to find a place. 2 days later, Richard found himself with a runny nose and a dry, scratchy throat. Mrs. Hanshaw had to admit that the virus of disease had found a lodging in her house, as though it were a miserable hovel of the Iron Age. It was over that her stubbornness and pride broke, and she admitted to herself that, after all, Richard had to have psychiatric help. Mrs. Hanshaw chose a psychiatrist with care. Her first impulse was to find one at a distance. For a while, she considered stepping directly into the San Francisco Medical Center and choosing one at random. And then it occurred to her that by doing that, she would become merely an anonymous consultant. She would have no way of obtaining any greater consideration for herself than would be forthcoming to any public door user of the city slums. Now, if she remained in her own community, her word would carry weight. She consulted the district map. It was one of that excellent series prepared by Doors Incorporated and distributed free of charge to their clients. Mrs. Hanshaw couldn't quite suppress that little thrill of civic pride as she unfolded the map. It wasn't a fine print directory of door coordinates only. It was an actual map with each house carefully located. And why not? District A3 was a name of moment in the world, a badge of aristocracy. It was the first community on the planet to have been established on a completely doored basis. The first, the largest, the wealthiest, the best known. It needed no factories, no stores. It didn't even need roads. Yeah, I can read. Each house was a little secluded castle, the door of which had entry anywhere the world over where other doors existed. Carefully, she followed down the keyed listing of the 5,000 families of District A3. She knew it included several psychiatrists. The learned professions were well represented in A3. Dr. Hamilton Sloane was the second name she arrived at, and her finger lingered upon the map. His office was scarcely 2 miles from the Hanshaw residence. She liked his name. The fact that he lived in A3 was evidence of worth, and he was a neighbor, practically a neighbor. He would understand that it was a matter of urgency and confidential. Firmly, she put in a call to his office to make an appointment. Dr. Hamilton Sloane was a comparatively young man, not quite 40. He was of good family and had indeed heard of Mrs. Hanshaw. He listened to her quietly and then said, "And this all began with the door breakdown." "That's right, Doctor." "Does he show any fear of the doors?" "Of course not. What an idea." She was plainly startled. "It's possible, Mrs. Hanshaw. It's possible. After all, when you stop to think of how a door works, it is rather a frightening thing, really. You step into a door, and for an instant your atoms are converted into field energies, transmitted to another part of space and converted into matter. Whatever, TikTok, I'm not a bot. You step into a door, and for an instant your atoms are converted into field energies, transmitted to another part of space, and reconverted into matter. For that instant, you're not alive. I'm sure no one thinks of such things. But your son may. He witnessed the breakdown of the door. He may be saying to himself, what if the door breaks down just as I'm halfway through? But that's nonsense. He still uses the door. He's even been to Canton with me, Canton, China. And as I told you, he uses it for school about once or twice a week. Freely? Cheerfully? Well, said Mrs. Hanshaw reluctantly, he does seem a bit put out by it, but really, Doctor, there isn't much use talking about it, is there? If you would just do a quick probe, see where the trouble is. And she finished on a bright note. Why, that would be all. I'm sure it's quite a minor thing. Dr. Sloane signed. He detested the word probe, and there was scarcely any word he heard oftener. Mrs. Hanshaw, he said patiently, there is no such thing as a quick probe. Now, I know the mag strips are full of it, and it's a rage in some circles, but it's much overrated. Are you serious? Quite. The probe is very complicated, and the theory is that it traces mental circuits. You see, the cells of the brains are interconnected in a large variety of ways. Some of those interconnected paths are more used than others. They represent habits of thought, both conscious and unconscious. Theory has it that these paths are in any given brain can be used to diagnose mental ills early with certainty. Well, then? But subjection to the probe is quite a fearful thing, especially to a child. It's a traumatic experience. It takes over an hour, and even then the results must be sent to the Central Psychoanalytical Bureau for analysis, and that could take weeks. And on top of that, Mrs. Hanshaw, there are many psychiatrists who think the theory of probe analysis to be most uncertain. Mrs. Hanshaw compressed her lips. You mean nothing can be done? Dr. Sloane smiled. None at all. There were psychiatrists for centuries before there were probes. I suggest that you let me talk to the boy. Talk to him? Is that all? I'll come to you for background information when necessary, but the essential thing, I think, is to talk to the boy. Really, Dr. Sloane, I doubt if he'll discuss the matter with you. He won't talk to me about it, and I'm his mother. That often happens, the psychiatrist assured her. The child will sometimes talk more readily to a stranger. In any case, I cannot take the case otherwise. Mrs. Hanshaw rose, not at all pleased. When can you come, Doctor? What about this coming Saturday? The boy won't be in school. Will you be busy? We will be ready. She made a dignified exit. Dr. Sloane accompanied her through the small reception room to his office door and waited while she punched the coordinates of her house. He watched her pass through. She became a half-woman, a quarter-woman, an isolated elbow, a foot, and nothing. It was frightening. Did a door ever break down during passage, leaving half a body here and half there? He had never heard of such a case, but he imagined it could happen. He returned to his desk and looked up the time of his next appointment. It was obvious to him that Mrs. Hanshaw was annoyed and disappointed at not having arranged for a psychic probe treatment. Why, for God's sake, why should a thing like the probe be an obvious piece of quackery in his own opinion, get such a hold on the general public? It must be part of this general trend toward machines. Anything man can do, the machines can do better. Machines. More machines. Machines for anything and everything. Oh, temporal, oh, mores. Oh, hell. His resentment of the probe was beginning to bother him. Was it a fear of technological unemployment? A basic insecurity on his part? A mechanophobia? As if that was the word. He made a mental note to discuss this with his own analyst. Dr. Sloane had to feel his way. The boy wasn't a patient who had come to him more or less anxious to talk, more or less anxious to be helped. Under the circumstances, it would have been best to keep his first meeting with Richard short and non-committal. It would have been sufficient merely to establish himself as something less than a total stranger. The next time he would be someone Richard had seen before. The time after that he would be an acquaintance, and after that a friend to the family. Unfortunately, Mrs. Hanshaw was not likely to accept a long, drawn-out process. She would go searching for a probe, and of course she would find it, and harm the boy. He was certain of that. It was for that reason he felt he must sacrifice a little of the proper caution and risk a small crisis. An uncomfortable 10 minutes had passed when he decided he must try. Mrs. Hanshaw was smiling in a rather rigid way, eyeing him narrowly as though she expected verbal magic from him. Richard wriggled in his seat, unresponsive to Dr. Sloane's tentative comments, overcome with boredom and unable not to show it. Dr. Sloane said with casual suddenness, "Would you like to take a walk with me, Richard?" The boy's eyes widened, and he stopped wriggling. He looked directly at Dr. Sloane. "A walk, sir?" "I mean outside." Do you go outside?" "Sometimes, when I feel like it." Richard was on his feet, holding down a squirming eagerness. "I didn't think anyone did." "I do, and I like company." The boy sat down uncertainly. "Mom?" Mrs. Hanshaw had stiffened in her seat, her compressed lips radiating horror, but she managed to say, "Why, certainly, Dickie, but watch yourself." And she managed a quick, baleful glare at Dr. Sloane. In one respect, Dr. Sloane had lied. He did not go outside sometimes. He hadn't been in the open since early college days. True, he had been athletically inclined, still was to some extent, but in his time in the indoor ultraviolet chambers, swimming pools, and tennis courts had flourished. For those with the price, they were much more satisfactory than the outdoor equivalents, open to the elements as they were. There was no occasion to go outside. So there was a crawling sensation about his skin when he felt wind touch it, and he put down his flexied shoes on bare grass with a gingerly movement. "Hey, look at that!" Richard was quite different now, laughing, his reserve broken down. Dr. Sloane had time only to catch a flash of blue that ended in a tree. Leaves rustled, and he lost it. "What was it?" "A bird," said Richard. "A blue kind of bird." Dr. Sloane looked about him in amazement. The Hanshaw residence was on a rise of ground, and he could see for miles. The area was only lightly wooded, and between clumps of trees, grass gleamed brightly in the sunlight. Colors set in deeper green made red and yellow patterns. They were flowers. From the books he had viewed in the course of his lifetime, and from old video shows, he learned enough so that all this had an eerie sort of familiarity. And yet the grass was so trim, the flowers so patterned. Dimly he realized he had been expecting something wilder. He said, "Who takes care of all this?" Richard shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe the Meccano's do it." "Mecanos?" "There's loads of them around. Sometimes they got a sort of atomic knife they hold near the ground. It cuts the grass. And they're always fooling around with the flowers and things. There's one of them over there." It was a small object, half a mile away. Its metal skin cast back highlights as it moved slowly over the gleaming meadow, engaging in some sort of activity that Dr. Sloane could not identify. Dr. Sloane was astonished. Here it was, a preserved sort of aestheticism, a kind of conspicuous consumption. "What's that?" he asked suddenly. Richard looked. He said, "That's a house. It belongs to the Frolics, coordinates A323-461. That little pointy building over there is the public door." Dr. Sloane was staring at the house. Was that what it looked like from the outside? Somehow he had imagined something more cubic, taller. "Come along," shouted Richard, running ahead. Dr. Sloane followed more sedately. "Do you know all the houses about here?" "Just about." "Where is A2326-475? It was his own house, of course. He looked about. Richard looked about. "Let's see. Oh, sure, I know where it is. You see that water there?" "Water?" Dr. Sloane made out a line of silver curving across the green. "Sure. Real water, just sort of running over rocks and things. It keeps running all the time. You can get across it if you step on the rocks. It's called a river." More like a creek, thought Dr. Sloane. He had studied geography, of course, but what passed for the subject these days was really economic and cultural geography. Physical geography was almost an extinct science except among specialists. Still, he knew what rivers and creeks were in a theoretical sort of way. Richard was still talking. "Well, just past the river, over the hill with the big clump of trees, and down the other side is A2326-475. It's a light greenhouse with a white roof." "Is it?" Dr. Sloane was genuinely astonished. He hadn't known it was green. Some small animal disturbed the grass in its anxiety to avoid the oncoming feet. Richard looked after it and shrugged. "You can't catch them. I tried." A butterfly flitted past, a wavering bit of yellow. Dr. Sloane's eyes followed it. There was a low hum that lay over the fields, interspersed with an occasional harsh calling sound, a rattle, a twittering, a chatter that rose then fell. As his ear accustomed itself to listening, Dr. Sloane heard 1,000 sounds, and none were man-made. A shadow fell upon the scene, advancing toward him, covering him. It was suddenly cooler, and he looked upward, startled. Richard said, "It's just a cloud. It'll go away in a minute. Look at these flowers. They're the kind that smell." They were several hundred yards from the Hanshaw residence. The cloud passed, and the sun shone once more. Dr. Sloane looked back and was appalled at the distance they had traveled. If they moved out of sight of the house, if Richard ran off, would he be able to find his way back? He pushed the thought away impatiently and looked out toward the line of water, nearer now, and past it to where his own house must be. He thought wonderingly, "Light green?" He said, "You must be quite an explorer." Richard said with a shy pride, "When I go to school and come back, I always try to use a different route and see new things." "But you don't go outside every morning, do you?" Sometimes you use the doors, I imagine." "Oh, sure." "Why is that, Richard?" Somehow Dr. Sloane felt there might be significance in that point. But Richard quashed him. With his eyebrows up and a look of astonishment on his face, he said, "Well, gosh, some mornings it rains and I have to use the door. I hate that, but what can you do? About 2 weeks ago, I got caught in the rain and He looked about him automatically, and his voice sank to a whisper. "Caught a cold. And wasn't Mom upset, though?" Dr. Sloane sighed. "Shall we go back now?" There was a quick disappointment in Richard's face. "Aw, what for?" "You remind me that your mother must be waiting for us." "I guess so." The boy turned reluctantly. They walked slowly back. Richard was saying chattily, "I wrote a composition at school once about how if I could go on some ancient vehicle," he pronounced it with exaggerated care, "I'd go on a stratoliner and look at stars and clouds and things. Oh boy, I was sure nuts." "You'd pick something else now?" "You bet." I'd go in an automobile, real slow. Then I'd see everything there was. Mrs. Hanshaw seemed troubled. You don't think it's abnormal then, Doctor? Unusual, perhaps, but not abnormal. He likes the outside. But how can he? It's so dirty, so unpleasant. That's a matter of individual taste. 100 years ago, our ancestors were all outside most of the time, even today. I dare say there are a million Africans who have never seen a door. But Richard's always been taught to behave himself the way a decent person in District A3 is supposed to behave, said Mrs. Hanshaw fiercely. Not like an African or an ancestor. That may be part of the trouble, Mrs. Hanshaw. He feels this urge to go outside, and yet he feels it to be wrong. He's ashamed to talk about it to you or to his teacher. It forces him into a sullen retreat, and it could eventually be dangerous. Then how can we persuade him to stop? Holy cow. Can't talk today. Dr. Sloan said, Don't try. Channel the activity instead. The day your door broke down, he was forced outside, found he liked it, and that set a pattern. He used the trip to school and back as an excuse to repeat that first exciting experience. Now suppose you agree to let him out of the house for 2 hours on Saturdays and Sundays. Suppose he gets it through his head that, after all, he can go outside without necessarily having to go anywhere in the process. Don't you think he'll be willing to use the door to go to school and back thereafter? And don't you think that will stop the trouble he's having with his teacher and probably his fellow pupils? But then will matters remain so? Must they? Won't he ever be normal again? Dr. Sloan rose to his feet. Mrs. Hanshaw, he's as normal as need be right now. Right now he's tasting the joys of the forbidden. If you cooperate with him, show that you don't disapprove, it will lose some of its attraction right there. Then, as he grows older, he will become more aware of the expectations and demands of society. He will learn to conform. After all, there's a little of the rebel in all of us, but it generally dies down as we grow old and tired. Unless, that is, it is unreasonably suppressed and allowed to build up pressure. Don't do that. Richard will be all right. He walked to the door. Mrs. Hanshaw said, And you don't think a probe will be necessary, Doctor? He turned and said vehemently, No, definitely not. There is nothing about the boy that requires it. Understand? Nothing. His fingers hesitated an inch from the combination board, and the expression on his face grew lowering. What's the matter, Dr. Sloan? Asked Mrs. Hanshaw. But he didn't hear her because he was thinking of the door and the psychic probe and all the rising, choking tide of machinery. There is a little of that rebel in all of us, he thought. So he said, in a soft voice, as his hand fell away from the board and as his feet turned away from the door, You know, it's such a beautiful day that I think I'll walk. So did anybody get the Jim Jams? Inside joke. If you weren't here weren't here on Wednesday, you won't get it. Oh boy. So how do we like that one? Did we like it? I liked it. Yeah, he is so good at putting a human face on technology. That's why I love his stories. I know, Rita. It's if you want to know what we're talking about, I can DM you the story that it's from. It was such a hilarious moment. Already warmed us of the Jim Jams. Dana, I read usually about 2 hours. I started at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I'll go till about 11 o'clock. So we've got another 45 minutes or so. Casey, yeah, it's such a it's he has that ability, and his stuff is so rooted in hard science that it's really wild that he can do that. Katie Cost, yeah, these are well, that one is not scary. I don't think any of them are scary tonight. They're the next two are going to be a little bizarre, but yeah. So let's see. So now we move from a world where everything is controlled to something far less certain, something unexpected and not quite what it seems. A story by Philip K. Dick. This is Beyond Lies the Wub. They had almost finished with the loading. Outside stood the Optus, his arms folded, his face sunk in gloom. Captain Franco walked leisurely down the gangplank, grinning. "What's the matter?" he said. "You're getting paid for all this." The Optus said nothing. He turned away, collecting his robes. The captain put his boot on the hem of the robe. "Just a minute. Don't go off. I'm not finished." "Oh?" The Optus turned with dignity. "I am going back to the village." He looked toward the animals and birds being driven up the gangplank into the spaceship. "I must organize new hunts." Franco lit a cigarette. "Why not? You people can go out into the veldt and try and track it down again. But when we run halfway between Mars and Earth..." The Optus went off, wordless. Franco joined the first mate at the bottom of the gangplank. "How's it coming?" he asked. He looked at his watch. "We got a good bargain here." The mate glanced at him sourly. "How do you explain that?" "What's the matter with you? We need it more than they do." "I'll see you later, Captain." The mate threaded his way up the plank between the long-legged Martian go-birds into the ship. Franco watched him disappear. He was just starting up after him, up the plank toward the port, when he saw it. My God! He stood staring, his hands on his hips. Peterson was walking along the path, his face red, leading it by a string. Sorry, Captain," he said, tugging at the string. Franco walked toward him. "What is it?" The wub stood sagging, its great body settling slowly. It was sitting down, its eyes half shut. A few flies buzzed around its flank, and it switched its tail. It sat. There was silence. "It's a wub," Peterson said. "I got it from a native for 50 cents. He said it was a very unusual animal, very respected." "This..." Franco poked at the great sloping side of the wub. "It's a pig. A huge, dirty pig." "Yes, sir, it's a pig. The natives call it a wub." "A huge pig. It must weigh 400 pounds. Franco grabbed a tuft of the rough hair. The wub gasped, its eyes opened, small and moist. Then its great mouth twitched. A tear rolled down the wub's cheek and splashed on the floor. "Maybe it's good to eat," Peterson said nervously. "We'll soon find out," Franco said. The wub survived the takeoff, sound asleep in the hold of the ship. When they were out in space, everything was running smoothly. Captain Franco bade his men fetch the wub upstairs so that he might perceive what manner of beast it was. The wub grunted and wheezed, squeezing up the passageway. "Come on," Jones grated, pulling at the rope. The wub twisted, rubbing its skin off on the small, smooth yeah, I can talk. Rubbing its skin off on the smooth chrome walls. It burst into the anteroom, tumbling down in a heap. The men leaped up. "Good Lord," French said. "What is it?" "Peterson says it's a wub," Jones said. "It belongs to him." He kicked at the wub. The wub stood up unsteadily, panting. "What's the matter with it?" French came over. "Is it going to be sick?" They watched. The wub rolled its eyes mournfully. It gazed around at the men. "I think it's thirsty," Peterson said. He went to get some water. French shook his head. "No wonder he had so much trouble taking off. I had to reset all my ballast calculations." Peterson came back with the water. The wub began to lap gratefully, splashing the men. Captain Franco appeared at the door. "Let's have a look at it." He advanced, squinting critically. "You got this for 50 cents?" "Yes, sir," Peterson said. "It eats almost anything. I fed it on grain and it liked that. And then potatoes and mash and scraps from the table and milk. It seems to enjoy eating. After it eats, it lies down and goes to sleep." "I see," Captain Franco said. "Now, as to its taste, that's the real question. I doubt if there's much point in fattening it up any more. It seems fat enough to me already. Where's the cook? I want him here. I want to find out." The wub stopped lapping and looked up at the captain. "Really, Captain?" the wub said. "I suggest we talk of other matters." The room was silent. "What was that?" Franco said. "Just now." "The wub, sir. It spoke." They all looked at the wub. "What did it say? What did it say?" "It suggested we talk about other things." Franco walked toward the wub. He went all around it, examining it. Dang it. I knew I forgot something. Thank you, Jillian. Franco walked toward the wub. He went all around it, examining it from every side. Then he came back over and stood with the men. "I wonder if there's a native inside it," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe we should open it up and have a look." "Oh, goodness!" the wub cried. "Is that all you people can think of? Killing and cutting?" Franco clenched his fist. "Come out of there! Whoever you are, come out!" Nothing stirred. The men stood together, their faces blank, staring at the wub. The wub switched its tail and belched suddenly. "I beg your pardon," the wub said. "I don't think there's anyone in there," Jones said in a low voice. They all looked at each other. The cook came in. "You wanted me, Captain?" he said. "What's this thing?" "This is a wub," Franco said. "It's to be eaten. Will you measure it and figure out—" "I think we should have a talk," the wub said. "I'd like to discuss this with you, Captain, if I might. I can see that you and I do not agree on some basic issues." The captain took a long time to answer. The wub waited good-naturedly, licking the water from its jowls. "Come into my office," the captain said at last. He turned and walked out of the room. The wub rose and padded after him. The men watched it go out. They heard it climbing the stairs. "I wonder what the outcome will be." "Well, I'll be in the kitchen. Let me know as soon as you're here." "Sure," Jones said. "Sure." The wub eased itself down in the corner with a sigh. "You must forgive me," it said. "I'm afraid I'm addicted to various forms of relaxation. When one is as large as I—" The captain nodded impatiently. He sat down at his desk and folded his hands. "All right," he said. "Let's get started. You're a wub, is that correct?" The wub shrugged. "I suppose so. That's what they call us, the natives, I mean. We have our own term." And you speak English. You've been in contact with Earthmen before?
No.
Then how do you do it?
Speak English? Am I speaking English? I am not conscious of speaking anything in particular. I examined your mind.
My mind.
I studied the contents, especially the semantic warehouse as I referred to it.
I see, the captain said. Telepathy, of course.
We are a very old race, the wub said. Very old and very ponderous. It is difficult for us to move around. You can appreciate anything so slow and heavy would be at the mercy of more agile forms of life. There was no use in our relying on physical defenses. How could we win? Too heavy to run, too soft to fight, too good-natured to hunt for game.
How do you live?
Plants, vegetables. We can eat almost anything. We're very Catholic. Tolerant, eclectic, Catholic. We live and let live. That's how we've gotten along.
The wub eyed the captain.
And that's why I so violently objected to this business about having me boiled. I could see the image in your mind, most of me in the frozen food locker, and some of me in a kettle, a bit for your pet cat.
So you read minds, the captain said. Oh, interesting. Anything else? I mean, what else can you do along those lines?
A few odds and ends, the wub said absently, staring around the room. A nice apartment you have here, Captain. You keep it quite neat. I respect life forms that are tidy. Some Martian birds are quite tidy. They throw things out of their nests and sweep them.
Indeed, the captain nodded. But to get back to the problem.
Quite so. You spoke of dining on me. The taste, I am told, is good. A little fatty, but tender. But how can any lasting contact be established between your people and mine if you resort to such barbaric attitudes? Eat me? Rather, you should discuss questions with me, philosophy, the arts.
The captain stood up. Philosophy. It might interest you to know that we will be hard put to find something to eat for the next month. An unfortunate spoilage.
I know, the wub nodded. But wouldn't it be more in accord with your principles of democracy if we all drew straws, or something along that line? After all, democracy is to protect the minority from such infringements. Now, if each of us casts one vote...
The captain walked to the door. Nuts to you, he said. He opened the door. He opened his mouth. He stood frozen, his mouth wide, his eyes staring, his fingers still on the knob. The wub watched him. Presently it padded out of the room, edging past the captain. It went down the hall, deep in meditation. The room was quiet.
So you see, the wub said, we have a common myth. Your mind contains many familiar myth symbols. Ishtar, Odysseus. Peterson sat silently, staring at the floor. He shifted in his chair. Go on, he said. Please go on. I find your Odysseus a figure common to the mythology of most self-conscious races. As I interpret it, Odysseus wanders as an individual, aware of himself as such. This is the idea of separation from family and country, the process of individualization.
But Odysseus returns to his home. Peterson looked out the port window at the stars, endless stars, burning intently in the empty universe. Finally he goes home.
As must all creatures. The moment of separation is a temporary period, a brief journey of the soul. It begins, it ends. The wanderer returns to land and race.
The door opened. The wub stopped, turning its great head. Captain Franco came into the room. The men behind him, they hesitated at the door. Are you all right? French said.
Do you mean me? Peterson said, surprised. Why me?
Franco lowered his gun. Come over here, he said to Peterson. "Get up and come here." There was silence.
"Go ahead," said the wub. "It doesn't matter."
Peterson stood up. "What for?" "It's an order." Peterson walked to the door. French caught his arm.
"What's going on?" Peterson wrenched loose. "What's the matter with you?"
Captain Franco moved toward the wub. The wub looked up from where it lay in the corner, pressed against the wall.
"It is interesting," the wub said, "that you are obsessed with the idea of eating me. I wonder why."
"Get up," Franco said.
"If you wish." The wub rose, grunting. "Be patient. It is difficult for me."
It stood, gasping, its tongue lolling foolishly.
"Shoot it now!" "For God's sake!" Peterson exclaimed.
Jones turned to him quickly, his gray eyes with fear. "You didn't see him, like a statue, standing there, his mouth open. If we hadn't come down, he'd still be here."
"Who? The captain?"
Peterson stared around. "But he's all right now." They looked at the wub, standing in the middle of the room, its great chest rising and falling. "Come on," Franco said. "Out of the way." The men pulled aside toward the door.
"You are quite afraid, aren't you?" the wub said. "Have I done anything to you? I am against the idea of hurting. All I have done is try to protect myself. Can you expect me to rush eagerly to my death? I am a sensible being like yourselves. I was curious to see your ship, learn about you. I suggested to the native—"
The gun jerked. "See?" Franco said. "I thought so." The wub settled down, panting. It put its paws out, pulling its tail around.
"It is very warm," the wub said. "I understand that we are close to the jets. Atomic power. You have done many wonderful things with it, technically. Apparently your scientific hierarchy is not equipped to solve moral, ethical—"
Franco turned to the men crowding behind him, wide-eyed, silent. "I'll do it. You can watch." Franco nodded. "Try to hit the brain. It's no good for eating. Don't hit the chest. If the rib cage shatters, we'll have to pick bones out." "Listen," Peter said, licking his lips. "Has it done anything? What harm has it done? I'm asking you. And anyhow, it's still mine. You have no right to shoot it. It doesn't belong to you." Franco raised his gun. "I'm going out," Jones said, his face white and sick. "I don't want to see it." "Me too," French said. The men straggled out, murmuring. Peterson lingered at the door. "It was talking to me about myths," he said. "It wouldn't hurt anyone." He went outside. Franco walked toward the wub. The wub looked up slowly. It swallowed. "A very foolish thing," it said. "I am sorry that you want to do it. There was a parable that your savior related." It stopped, staring at the gun. "Can you look me in the eye and do it?" the wub said. "Can you do that?" The captain gazed down. "I can look you in the eye," he said. "Back on the farm we had hogs, dirty razorback hogs. I can do it." Staring down at the wub into the gleaming, moist eyes, he pressed the trigger. The taste was excellent. They sat glumly around the table, some of them hardly eating at all. The only one who seemed to be enjoying himself was Captain Franco. "More?" he said, looking around. "More? And some wine, perhaps?" "Not me," French said. "I think I'll go back to the chart room." "Me too." Jones stood up, pushing his chair back. "I'll see you later." The captain watched them go. Some of the others excused themselves. "What do you suppose the matter is?" the captain said. He turned to Peterson. Peterson sat staring... Jesus. Peterson sat staring down at his plate, at the potatoes, the green peas, and the thick slab of tender, warm meat.
He opened his mouth. No sound came. The captain put his hand on Peterson's shoulder. It is only organic matter now, he said. The life essence is gone. He ate, spooning up the gravy with some bread. I myself love to eat. It is one of the greatest things that a living creature can enjoy. Eating, resting, meditation, discussing things. Peterson nodded. 2 more men got up and went out. The captain drank some water and sighed. Well, he said, I must say that this was a very enjoyable meal. All the reports I had heard were quite true. The taste of the wub, very fine. But I was prevented from enjoying this in times past. He dabbed at his lips with his napkin and leaned back in his chair. Peterson stared dejectedly at the table. The captain watched him intently. He leaned over. Come, he said. Cheer up. Let's discuss things. He smiled. As I was saying before I was interrupted, the role of Odysseus in the myths... Peterson jerked up, staring. To go on, the captain said, Odysseus, as I understand him... Yeah, sometimes I get a little tongue-tied. And sometimes it's because I'm trying to go too fast and I have to force myself to slow down. But, oh no, got kicked out. That is the terrible. Yes, it's what's funny is that after... it's funny you say that, because after Wizard of Oz, we'll be doing Charlotte's Web. So, oh, yep. Did you get the Jim Jams? Oh, boy. So that was an interesting one. I am a big fan of Philip K. Dick's work. He's very into digging into the nature of existence. Oh, you missed the end. Basically, they killed the wub. They ate the wub. And the captain ate the wub. And, of course, the wub seems to have taken over the captain's mind. So they didn't really off the wub. Didn't actually get the wub. Didn't kill the wub. Serves him right. Yes, exactly. So now we move from something unexpected to something presented as fact. Something carefully explained and quietly unsettling. This is The Food of the Gods by Arthur C. Clarke. Now, if that name rings a bell, it's because Arthur C. Clarke wrote the book that is that one of the great science fiction films of all time is based on, 2001, A Space Odyssey. I clicked before I started reading, so be proud of me. I got the Jiminy Jams, yes. So this story was first published in May of 1964. It's only fair to warn you, Mr. Chairman, that much of my evidence will be highly nauseating. It involves aspects of human nature that are very seldom discussed in public, and certainly not before a congressional committee. But I am afraid they have to be faced. There are times when the veil of hypocrisy has to be ripped away, and this is one of them. Thank you. I appreciate that. You and I, gentlemen, have descended from a long line of carnivores. I see from your expressions that most of you don't recognize the term.
Well, that's not surprising. It comes from a language that has been obsolete for 2,000 years. Perhaps I had better avoid euphemisms and be brutally frank, even if I have to use words that are never heard in polite society. I apologize in advance to anyone I may offend. Until a few centuries ago, the favorite food of almost all men was meat, the flesh of once living animals. I'm not trying to turn your stomachs. This is a simple statement of fact, which you can check in any history book. Why, certainly, Mr. Chairman, I'm quite prepared to wait till Senator Irving feels better. We professionals sometimes forget how laymen may react to statements like that. At the same time, I must warn the committee that there is very much worse to come. If any of you gentlemen are at all squeamish, I suggest you follow the senator before it's too late. Well, if I may continue, until modern times all food fell into two categories. Most of it was produced from plants, cereals, fruits, plankton, algae, and other forms of vegetation. It's hard for us to realize that the vast majority of our ancestors were farmers, winning food from land or sea by primitive and often back-breaking techniques. But that is the truth. The second type of food, if I may return to this unpleasant subject, was meat, produced from a relatively small number of animals. You may be familiar with some of them: cows, pigs, sheep, whales. Most people, I'm sorry to stress this, but the fact is beyond dispute, preferred meat to any other food, though only the wealthiest were able to indulge this appetite. To most of mankind, meat was a rare and occasional delicacy on a diet that was more than 90% vegetable. If we look at the matter calmly and dispassionately, as I hope Senator Irving is now in a position to do, we can see that meat was bound to be rare and expensive, for its production is an extremely inefficient process. To make a kilo of meat, the animal concerned had to eat at least 10 kilos of vegetable food. Very often that could have been consumed directly by human beings. Quite apart from any consideration of aesthetics, this state of affairs could not be tolerated after the population explosion of the 20th century. Every man who ate meat was condemning 10 or more of his fellow humans to starvation. Luckily for all of us, the biochemists solved this problem. As you may know, the answer was one of the countless byproducts of space research. All food, animal or vegetable, is built up from very few common elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, traces of sulfur and phosphorus. These half-dozen elements and a few others combine in an almost infinite variety of ways to make up every food that man has ever eaten or will eat. Faced with the problem of colonizing the moon and planets, the biochemists of the 21st century discovered how to synthesize any desired food from the raw basic materials of water, air, and rock. It was the greatest and perhaps the most important achievement in the history of science, but we should not feel too proud of it. The vegetable kingdom had beaten us by 1 billion years. The chemists could now synthesize any conceivable food, whether it had a counterpart in nature or not. Needless to say, there were mistakes, even disasters. Industrial empires rose and crashed. The switch from agriculture and animal husbandry to the gigantic automatic processing plants that omnivores of today was often a painful one. But it had to be made, and we are the better for it. The danger of starvation has been banished forever, and we have a richness and variety of food that no other age has ever known. In addition, of course, there was a moral gain. We no longer murder millions of living creatures, and such revolting institutions as the slaughterhouse and the butcher's shop have vanished from the face of the earth. It seems incredible to us that even our ancestors, coarse and brutal though they were, could ever have tolerated such obscenities. And yet, it is impossible to make a clean break with the past. As I have already remarked, we are carnivores. We inherit tastes and appetites that have been acquired over 1,000,000 years' time. Whether we like it or not, only a few years ago, some of our great-grandparents were enjoying the flesh of cattle and sheep and pigs when they could get it. And we still enjoy it today. Oh dear, maybe Senator Irving had better stay outside from now on. Perhaps I should not have been quite so blunt. What I meant, of course, was that many of the synthetic foods we now eat have the same formula as the old natural products. Some of them, indeed, are such exact replicas that no chemical or other test could reveal any difference. This situation is logical and inevitable. We manufacturers simply took the most popular pre-synthetic foods as our models and reproduced their taste and texture. Of course, we also created new names that didn't hint of an anatomical or zoological origin, so that no one would be reminded of the facts of life. When you go into a restaurant, most of the words you'll find on the menu have been invented since the beginning of the 21st century, or else adapted from French originals that few people would recognize. If you ever want to find your threshold of tolerance, you can try an interesting but highly unpleasant experiment. The classified section of the Library of Congress has a large number of menus from famous restaurants and White House banquets going back for 500 years. They have a crude dissecting room frankness that makes them almost unreadable. I cannot think of anything that reveals more vividly the gulf between us and our ancestors of only a few generations ago. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am coming to the point. All this is highly relevant, however disagreeable it may be. I'm not trying to spoil your appetites. I am merely laying the groundwork for the charge I wish to bring against my competitor, Triplanetary Food Corporation. Unless you understand this background, you may think that this is a frivolous complaint inspired by the admittedly serious losses my firm has sustained since Ambrosia Plus came on the market. New foods, gentlemen, are invented every week. It is hard to keep track of them. They come and go like women's fashions, and only 1 in 1,000 becomes a permanent addition to the menu. It is extremely rare for one to hit the public fancy overnight, and I freely admit that the Ambrosia Plus line of dishes has been the greatest success in the entire history of food manufacture. You all know the position. Everything else has been swept off the market. Naturally, we were forced to accept the challenge. The biochemists of my organization are as good as any in the solar system, and they promptly got to work on Ambrosia Plus. I am not giving away any trade secrets when I tell you that we have tapes of practically every food, natural or synthetic, that has ever been eaten by mankind, right back to exotic items that you never heard of, like fried squid, locusts in honey, peacock's tongues, Venusian polypod. Our enormous library of flavors and textures is our basic stock in trade, as it is with all firms in the business. From it, we can select and mix items in any conceivable combination, and usually we can duplicate without too much trouble any product that our competitors put out. But Ambrosia Plus had us baffled for quite some time. Its protein-fat breakdown classified it as straightforward meat, without too many complications, yet we couldn't match it exactly. It was the first time my chemists had failed. Not one of them could explain just what gave the stuff its extraordinary appeal, which, as we all know, makes every other food seem insipid by comparison. As well it might, but I am getting ahead of myself.
Very shortly, Mr. Chairman, the president of Triplanetary Foods will be appearing before you, rather reluctantly, I'm sure. He will tell you that Ambrosia Plus is synthesized from air, water, limestone, sulfur, phosphorus, and the rest. That will be perfectly true, but it will be the least important part of the story. For we have now discovered his secret, which, like most secrets, is very simple once you know it. Eyeball itch. I really must congratulate my competitor. He has at last made available unlimited quantities of what is, from the nature of things, the ideal food for mankind. Until now, it has been in extremely short supply, and therefore all the more relished by the few connoisseurs who can obtain it. Without exception, they have sworn that nothing else can remotely compare with it. Yes, Triplanetary's chemists have done a superb technical job. Now you have to resolve the moral and philosophical issues. When I began my evidence, I used the archaic word carnivore. Now I must introduce you to another. I'll spell it out for you the first time. Cannibal. It is very similar to Soylent Green. Soylent Green is people. I swear, only Charlton Heston could say that line. Soylent Green is people. Also, I have to ask, what do you guys think of the new cover? Oh no, he got booted again. So it turns out that Triplanetary Foods had synthesized human meat. Yeah, I was messing around in Photoshop this morning, and I hit on this, and I was like, that looks really cool. Yep, Soylent Green. Thank you. Tastes like chicken. That's why everything tastes like chicken. Thank you. I'm glad you guys like it. It's I'm gonna be using it for different things, particularly for over on the YouTubes, for the cover image for when I do the live events and stuff like that. So, well, we actually finished a little earlier than I anticipated tonight, and that's okay. So what we have coming up next week is going to be our Wizard of Oz event on Sunday night. We'll start reading The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. We'll continue through Wednesday and Friday. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you all will join us. Fun fact, did you know that there are 14 books in the original Wizard of Oz series written by L. Frank Baum? I did not know that. And the cool thing is all of them are in public domain, so I can actually record them as audiobooks and post them on my YouTube channel. If you are not following, no, it's 14, and then I forget the author's name that took over, but it was oh god, what was her name? I'd have to look it up. But yeah, there was a woman author took it over and went through the other books. Like there was quite a few more after that. Eddie, I hope you'll be able to join us for all 3 nights. I think it's going to be a really fun. It's going to be really fun. But yeah, so I
And then the following Sunday after that, we'll be doing Charlotte's Web. I'm not sure what's going to come after that. That'll be 2 Sundays. That is a 2 session book. Yeah, so that's that. I don't have to worry about. It's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same time as normal, as my regular lives. I try to keep them as consistent as possible, so that, all you got to remember is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, whatever that translates for you, wherever you are, and then Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. I probably will be doing either a Tuesday or Thursday live coming up, but I will let you guys all know about that. I'll be doing that soon with a bunch of my voice actor friends. We'll be coming in to do reading poetry and short stories and things like that. That's actually going to be a 4-hour event. I haven't decided if I'm going to go from 8 to midnight, or from like 7 to 7 to 11. I'll decide that to do that. So yeah, but so I've got that all going, and then I'll have some more stories picked out for the following Wednesday, and yeah. So one of the things that I want to do is get back into. I have not read Trumpet of the Swan yet. Yeah, and that's gonna. And once I finish, I believe it's another E.B. White book. So you're ready for sleep now, Katie. I take that as a compliment that I have tired everyone out, soothed everybody. I probably won't be doing Harry Potter, only because those books are a fair bit longer. There are some books that are just they take. I mean, it would. I think there's one that I would love to read, called The Invention of Hugo Cabret. It's a wonderful book. It's actually one of my youngest daughter's favorite books. She's 18 now. But it's one that's it's big, and it would probably take me 2 months worth of reading to get through, like 8 Sundays. Like, I would also love to do The Never-Ending Story, but that one is also very long and very dense. It's a great book, but man, it would take forever. It would take, not forever, but it would take probably another 2 months of reading to get through. And I like to try to keep them to anywhere between 2 and 4 Sundays. I don't want anybody to get. The Princess Bride is in fact a book. Yes, it never ends. Yeah, it says it right in the title. I would like to do Winnie the Pooh. I would like to do the rest of the Paddington books. Oh, Treasure Island, wonderful. Anybody that's in here, if you don't follow, go to Rita Reader's page and give her a follow. She's doing some great storytelling on her page, and I for whatever reason it doesn't come up in my feed, so I have to remember to go search them. But yeah, you're very welcome, Rita. There's room at the table for everyone. I'm a firm believer in that. And you've been such a dedicated supporter that I'm happy to shout you out. My daughter's going to try hang for. Yeah, Charlotte's Web is it is one of my all-time favorites. It has a very difficult ending. And so I'll tell you guys a quick sweet little story. Um, so I used to read I've read Charlotte's Web to my kids probably 2 times. And the first time I read it to them, we get to the towards the end, and the line that always gets me, and I'm choking up just thinking about it, is when Charlotte dies. And it's, no one was with her when she died. And that just breaks my heart. So I am sitting, they had bunk beds, and I would sit on the floor, and I would be reading the book, and the kids would be leaning over their beds and watching me read. And I get to that line, and it just breaks me. My kids, my 2 sweet daughters, who are about 2 years apart in age, both come down off their beds, and one on one side, one on the other, and they give me hugs. And my oldest looks at me and says, "Don't worry, Daddy. Wilbur's going to take care of Charlotte's babies." And that broke me even more. So that was, but that's, yeah. So, yes, stick around for Charlotte's Web, and you guys will see me cry. um, yeah. So, well, it's now 11:03. Yeah, that 20,000. 20,000. Yeah, I got to get to 20. That's 20,000. Yeah. Yeah, Katie Cost. That is like so, that hits me hard every time. Every time I read it. It's like watching E.T. Like, that movie just breaks me. Oh my god. The ending, when they're saying goodbye, and just, "I'll be right here." Done. I'm done. 15 maybe. What do you don't think I'll ever get to 20? We'll see. We will see. So, well, thank you all for spending a little time with me here this evening. Join me Sunday as we begin a special event reading Wizard of Oz, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, continuing Wednesday and concluding on Friday. And if you enjoy these stories and would like to help support what I do here, please consider subscribing or becoming a superfan. It helps keep the campfire lit. And as always, whether you subscribe or not, I am just grateful that you are here, because I would not enjoy this as much as I do if not for all of you. I would not be doing what I'm doing if not for you guys, So, until then, please be kind to each other. And be kind to yourself, because kindness matters. And so do you. Good night, everybody.